In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Welcome back to the Deal Board, everybody. And today we're very excited. We get to do these episodes sometimes here and there, but feature a past business owner that Transworld worked with and featured their story, their entrepreneurial story from start to finish. So, Andy, you've got a great interview today that I'm excited to hear as well.
I have a great one, Laura Haftel from Tugboat and the Bird. And you're thinking, what the heck is Tugboat and the Bird? Well, if you're from Orlando or, the greater Orlando area, you would know that is a very nice children's store that has all kinds of goods, including mostly high-end goods, high-end toys, high-end products, high-end clothing. And it's been around for a couple of decades. It's been an amazing success story. And Laura was a buyer. She used to work in the Macy's, and then she wound up at the Gap. She wound up moving to Orlando area because her husband got into law school there. And guess what? They had a couple of kids, and she's in this high-pressure job at the Gap, flying all around the world, opening stores, buying for the stores, and realizing that she needed to come home. She wound up finding out that she was a customer of the store, finding out that the store was for sale, and she wound up buying it. And Tugboat and the Bird was actually named by the founders that they had two babies, and that was their nicknames. But she took it to, of course, another level. And the story goes of her transformation of the store from being just a local high-end clothing store to having to pivot several times, think COVID, think the economic downturn, think online retailing, and then finally deciding she was in a place in her life where she wanted to sell. And she had a goal in mind, and guess what? She called Transworld.
Well, I'm really excited to hear the story. We love these full circles of, acquiring a business, being able to scale and grow it to its full potential, and then, of course, the exit story. But I think it also provides a lot of value for listeners to hear others' experiences. So we've got that lined up for you today as well. Always a listing of the week and a deal of the week to spark your interest.
Yep. It's going to be a great episode. Love the entrepreneur stories. Check it out. So here it comes.
Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm with over 500 brokers in nearly 200 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/the deal board or call 888-719-9098.
Welcome back, everybody. And we have another entrepreneur story for you. We love these. We love successful people who had a successful exit, especially when it's with Transworld. And today we have Laura Haftel from Tugboat and the Bird, and she's got a great story. You're going to hear more about it. But I want to welcome Laura. Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Hi.
So, Laura, let's start at the beginning. We all have our entrepreneurial stories about how we decided, hey, we're not going to work for someone else. We're going to work for ourselves. How did you get started being an entrepreneur?
So when I went to Miami of Ohio, and when I graduated, my first job was with Macy's, and I went there so excited, did their executive training program, managed a department there, eventually ended up back in the buying office, and I loved it. It was awesome. We bought back in the day, it was Bullock's out in California and all of Macy's South. So I spent a couple years in the buying office and just loved the analytics of it, learned my way around an open to buy. What is a gross margin? What's a turn? All the classic retail lingo. From there, I was recruited to work for the Gap stores, the Gap Inc. back in the day in the 90s. They were so just flourishing back then. And I was hired to become an area manager and ultimately a district manager up in the DC area. So I was able to run, 10 or 12 kind of Gap stores up in that area. From there, I learned really just how to run stores, what's an operating statement, how to manage 600 people, how to hire managers. So the background there was pretty awesome. So when I moved to Florida, I followed my husband to Florida. He was going to Stetson Law School, and his first job out of law school was here in Orlando. So at that point, I had 2 little kids, and I was just traveling so much with my job with the Gap. I was just like on the road the whole time, and just kind of at that point made the decision that I felt like maybe that corporate life wasn't for me at that time in our life, as my husband's like, starting out practicing law. So I was like, what am I going to do? I want to work. What's my skill set? And it just made sense. I knew how to buy. I also knew how to run stores, and my husband and I talked about it, and it kind of seemed like maybe owning my own store was kind of like the next logical step. So we had heard about Tugboat and the Bird. I did not found the business. It was founded by an actual friend of mine now, back in 2001. And she was selling it, in 2002. So she only owned it for like 8 or 9 months. So I was like, gosh, this kind of seems like this could be good. We heard about it from a friend of a friend. It was an accountant told us about it. So my husband and I just looked it over and said that just seemed logical, seemed like the next step for us. So we bought it in August of 2002. And, I just thought, gosh, this is like a home run. I know how to run stores. I know how to do the buying, but owning your own business is so, so different than having like a corporate sort of backbone to fall back on. So one of the first things that I did was within the first year or two, I hired an outside like inventory management company that was like so helpful for me. And from there, I just, ran it for 22 years very successfully. We definitely had some challenges. 2008, 2009 come to mind when kind of everything bottomed out for the economy. And that was like a turning point for me. I felt like I'm either going to like continue to try to ride this out. I wasn't making money at that. I mean, I wasn't losing money, but I also wasn't like making as much money as I thought for as hard as I was working.
Right.
So what I decided to do then was just move to Park Avenue. So I thought I'm either going to like just decide to walk away from this, or it's kind of like go big or go home. Sounds kind of cliche, but it was true in my mind at the time. I'd read this book called Bull Moves in Bear Markets, and it was all about how Tiffany's survived the Great Depression. And I just happened to read this book at that time, and it just really changed the way that I looked at like the challenge of 2009. And that was what they did was they never thought that like there was a depression. They always knew people had money to spend, and they just thought the cream is going to rise and your competition is going to fall out, and just always keep your shelves stocked, keep your inventory high, have things for your customers to buy. And it just really stuck with me. So I moved to Park Avenue, which was a risk because the rent was a lot higher. And I'm like, what am I doing in 2009 when like the world is falling apart? I'm like, nope, I'm just going to keep going after this high-end children's business. But it really was pivotal for me. I just was like, nope, we're just going to keep stocking the shelves, and we're going to find even better, more quality products. And from that year, we probably doubled our business. It was like crazy, crazy good. The customers just, I think even though the economy was challenging, people are always going to want baby gifts. People are having babies and birthday parties and all of that kind of stuff. It's just, in some ways, I don't want to say recession proof, but in some ways, you're not gonna not buy for your kids, right? And so that was kind of the mindset I went into that challenging time with. And from there, we just kept like skyrocketing. It was just so much fun. I would say like our next big, so then we're just, plodding along here, doing pretty well. And then, 2020 hits us. And I thought, oh gosh, if I can survive COVID, right? And I just, while everybody, the world was panicking and, employees like kind of freaking out, I just thought, if we could get through 2008 and 2009, we can kind of get through anything. It was March of 2020, which is our peak year, our peak time of the year. I had about $500,000 worth of inventory. And, we get this ordinance saying you got to close your doors. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is such a challenge. But kind of, I felt the same way again. Like, I'm just going to treat it the way that I treated everything in 2009. And we we're all brainstorming. We're like, these young moms are going to be at home with their kids. They're not in school. What are they going to do? They're going to need things. So we started like kind of buying things like sidewalk chalk and coloring books and puzzles and swimsuits and pajamas. Like, we just completely like changed course. Like, normally I'd be buying like pretty Easter dresses, but I'm like, nope, we're going to kind of switch gears here. And, we created these like busy boxes. Like, we thought, okay, these kind of age appropriate busy boxes. We'll put, busy box for your 3-year-old that's at home, or your 4-year-old, or your 5-year-old. And we were kind of inventing these things that were like age appropriate things that you could, give your kids while they're at home. And interesting story, like one of our national publications kind of saw it on Instagram that we were doing that, and they picked up the story and ran with it. And before I knew it, we were like getting calls from like all over the country. I need a busy box for a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old. And next thing I know, like, my son got trapped home because he was in college and he was on spring break, and then he couldn't go back. And I'm like, he's doing deliveries for me. And my daughter's also, I think she was maybe a sophomore in college at the time. And she's just like, oh my gosh. So she also said, we needed a website. We didn't really have a website because our inventory turned so fast that it was hard to kind of keep up with it. So I'll just never forget, she was a sophomore in college, and she's of course also on lockdown. So she's like, there's nothing social going on, but I'll build you a website. I'm like, okay. So she, but I also knew that we had to switch our point of sale software because it wasn't going to connect with any platform. So I took the time while we were kind of in this lockdown period to switch over my point of sale, which then ultimately connected with the Shopify, which then also ultimately connected with this point of sale software that I really loved. I had upgraded it at that point. And so I feel like just the combination of those 3 things really just, again, took our business to heights that I could have never imagined. It was like amazing. I'm a very analytical person because of the background that I have. So I just was really like diving into the numbers and just, again, finding what our customers were wanting during this incredibly challenging, time for us. But I feel like we just persevered. We were like, nope, we're just not going to let this get us down. And, again, over the coming years, we just kept, adding these incredible increases to the business. It was just, I couldn't believe it. In fact, to the point where the inventory management company was calling me going like, what are you guys doing? Like, it's, because they'd accessed all my numbers. They're like, what's going on? Even like things like projecting, then after kind of the COVID thing was over, then the following year were all the supply chain issues. But because I was using this inventory management company, I could kind of project what I was going to need to kind of get me through those peak times. So when Target was out of Hot Wheels and things, we weren't, we had kind of front loaded and got through, yet another crazy, busy season because we kind of front loaded our inventory to kind of get us through. Again, just going back to that theory that I always have is that just keep your shelf stocked and just be better than anybody else. And people are always going to want to spend money on their kids. And I kept kind of going back to that mantra that I had picked up in that book that I had read. And that just definitely, beyond sustained us through, some of the more challenging years. So that's kind of our story. And, and definitely Tugboat and Bird is on the map. People come from definitely all over Florida saying, I saw you on Instagram, or I got your email, or, I've heard about you. I was out on a buying trip out in California, and there was a lady in the line out in California, and she had one of my shopping bags. I was like, wow, okay, we've arrived. It's kind of fun.
That's It's an amazing story.
Mhm.
I have a couple questions for you.
Yes.
By the way, I agree with you. 2009, and I don't know why. I have offices all over Florida, and our hardest hit office was Orlando and the greater Central Florida area. And I think most of it was travel, right? At any one time in Orlando, there's probably half people that live there and the other half are visiting, right?
Correct.
And that half went away. And I'm sure those were a lot of your shoppers in your store as well.
Mhm.
So take me back a little bit. So tell me about the original tugboat and the bird. What's behind the name, number one? And when you bought it, was it still that high end, children's store,
Good
or
question.
have you
So
changed?
the name came from the previous owner. It was two sisters that owned it, and they had two little kids at the time. And one of the sisters, her little girl, I guess her hair when she was really little kind of stood up on the top of her head, so they called her Birdie. That was her nickname. And she recently was married, and she still, I guess they still call her Birdie. And her cousin was a two or 3 year old, I guess, and was like a girl, was unusually strong. Rumor has it she could like move a couch with like her shoulders at like a very young age. So they all called her Tugboat. So apparently these sisters were sitting around a table discussing, let's open this business. And they had like a little cocktail napkin, and they just started sketching out, if we named it after our nicknames of our kids, Tugboat and Bird. And so anyway, it just became the name of the store. I wish I could say I came up with it because I think it's adorable, but I did not come up with it, but I kept it. Such a cute name. So that's the background of that. And when I did buy it, it was definitely high end, but very, I want to say almost formal in a way. Like the majority of the store was taffeta dresses and very expensive, but that wasn't the issue. It was just more that it just kind of seemed to all be in the same pipeline of just fancy dresses. And so I quickly assessed from just reading some of the reports that I could create that the margins were not as high as I thought they should be. And perhaps we should kind of widen like what we're offering. And so as soon as I bought it, I definitely wanted to keep that flair of the dresses, but we went into just some everyday stuff too. Like and as long as the moms are going to be in here, we might as well offer them more selections. So, through the years, we kept it very traditional at first, but then I started to realize customers also just wanted like fun, everyday, whimsical things. So we kind of branched into swimwear and pajamas and a lot of other things. So does that answer your question? Did you ask
Yeah,
another?
no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that you read that book, right? So I love that.
At that time, I know.
At that time, and you read the book, and a lot of what we do as business people, and you're right, is we make decisions in the worst times that set us up to profit in good times. And
So
when
true.
everybody's panicking, if you're investing, we started our franchise in 2009. So
Really? Okay.
yeah,
Yes. So
so
you
it
understand.
was the worst time. It was
Worst time.
and
Everybody
we
was
said,
like, what do you mean
hey,
you're moving to Park Avenue? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, and you got to like tune all that out. Like, that's one thing I learned is I'd never really told people what was on my radar because I just found people were so opinionated. I didn't want anyone to like get in my head and make me second guess myself. I'm like, this is what I'm doing and I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it really well. And so I tried not to tell people like what I was thinking or doing because I find that people, can get in your head and make you second guess yourself.
yeah, and I think quality, quality and higher end items, I see that in the boat business when we sell a lot of boat businesses. They don't really have recessions sometimes, especially the top kind of companies dealing with the upper echelon of the marketplace, because those people don't necessarily run out of money during those times.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So tell me, so you're doing well, you start this website, you're now national. What makes you think about retiring?
That's such a good question. So I think, retail is, it's rewarding, very rewarding. But I also, when I set out to do this, my kids were very young. And my goal was to just make enough money to like put them through private school, whatever college they wanted to go to. I didn't really want to like think about, I just wanted it to be easy for us to just let them go to school wherever they wanted to. So that was kind of like my initial goal. I had no idea it would grow as much as it did or become as successful as it was, but that was my goal. And I had a 5-year lease kind of staring at me this year. And I thought, do I really want to do this for another 5 years, or do I want to, bow out while things are really good and try to find another path? Because I do have some things that I want to do in my life. My husband this past summer started his own law firm, so he's obviously working a ton right now. And I just knew there were some other things that I wanted to do. What we talked about even earlier, that is so interesting to me, or consulting work is so interesting to me. And I thought, do I want to get into another 5-year lease? So, and I hadn't really closed that door. I wasn't 100% certain that I was going to sell the business. I just was thinking about it. And so a friend of mine knows Mike from Transworld, and she said, just go talk to him, So I was like literally just kicking tires. I thought, well, and I thought too, if I am going to sell it in the next 4 or 5 years, I thought, gosh, this could be really great to meet with somebody to just not only evaluate the business, but also tell me, could it be worth more if I did X, Y, or Z? I was just trying to be like really proactive, actually. So when I met with him, it was very exploratory, and also just kind of just planning, really. But we had a great conversation. He wanted to see all my financials, so I shared everything with him. And, within not very long, he gave me a very quick analysis of the business. He was really impressed, and he was like, wow, you run a really great business. And I thought he was going to give me some suggestions, like, here, do this or do that. And he really said, I don't really have any for you. You do a really good job. He valued the business, and it was definitely what I was hoping for, even more than I thought. And I thought, well, I honestly thought it could take a few years. It's kind of a niche business. It's going to take the right buyer, the right person. So I thought, if this takes a couple years, I'm good. I don't need to not work right now, but it happens. That was really my sort of going into it. So we had an offer within 24 hours. I was like, okay. It didn't end up being the people that ended up buying the business, but I really wanted to find somebody that understands retail. I talked to a lot of people. Many people would approach me before I met with Mike from Transworld and said, oh, I'd love to, I had a collection of business cards, people saying, if you ever decide to sell, let me know. Or if you ever want a franchise, let me know. And I would always say, why do you think you want to own this? And so many people said, oh, I think it'd be so fun to go to market and pick up baby clothes. Or I always felt like it was almost going to be a side hustle for some people. And I thought, we've just built something a lot bigger than that. It's so much more than just going to market and picking out clothes. It's so much more than that. I just felt like it had to be the right person. And so a few weeks later, maybe a month later, Mike brought another couple to me, said somebody else was interested. And I felt like they were the right people. So, I thought, well, it's happening, so I'm going to go with it.
Well, that's a great story. And you have to be opportunistic sometimes. You just, when something comes around, and being an entrepreneur, as you're throwing these kind of road bumps and these detours, and you make the most of it. And it sounds like when you started exploring selling, you're just like, I could do something else in my life. And
absolutely.
How you were there for 20 years, right?
No, 22 years. We just it was founded in 2001. So it's going to celebrate 23 years this year, but I was there for 22 of those 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
As I always say, we do have a saying here at Transworld: if you're in your business for longer than 10 years, you're probably you should think about doing something else in your life. So it's always fun to think about other things. So.
And I definitely, I have some ideas of what that's going to be, to be announced at a later date, but there's definitely things that I want to do. And I thought, I don't know if I want to wait too much longer to do those. It was a great run. I loved it. I mean, I loved what I did. I loved the people. I do miss that, the day-to-day interactions with the people and the customers, because I do love that. But I know I'll find that in my next adventure.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you You had a great, yeah, and I know you had a great partner in Mike Shea. There's no one better.
There really isn't. He pushed that thing along. I mean, honestly, if he just was like, "Yep, this is what's going to happen," he was amazing. He really did.
Yeah, he's a very tactical guy. You talked about that too, and he's a very tactical guy. And and again, that's kind of what we specialize here at Transworld. We try to, we're very good at finding the right person to buy the right deal. And you had a unique deal. I mean, it's a unique business. And, we've seen lots of retail businesses come and go. And we've seen a lot of people kind of poo-poo the retail industry like it has no future. But I think, stores like yours are going to buck the trend.
I mean, I think if we were talking about a mall, maybe, but I think there's still just something when you've got that small, local, family-owned business, there's just nothing like it. I don't believe any of that. I think that people still want to come in, they want to have the experience, they want to touch and especially for children's, they want to touch and feel the product. They want the experience. I don't think that's ever going to go away if you provide the right experience. I don't think there's anything that's ever going to take the place of that experience, that just local shopping, supporting your community. And there's just so many reasons to shop local. And I think that's why those are not going to go by the wayside.
I absolutely agree with you. So I'm going to ask you one more question.
Yes.
Just because a lot of people listening to this are thinking about getting into business or, considering getting out of business. So if someone, and I always love giving advice to young people. So if you had some advice for a younger person thinking about getting in business, what would it be?
Just to really, and people ask me this all the time. And I just say, just really think about why you want to do it. What are the reasons behind you wanting to get into business for yourself, because it comes with a lot of challenges as well. And I think that, you have to be really confident in what you're doing. I think if you want to go into business for yourself, your idea has to be unique and different. People have asked me, "Oh, what do you think about this business?" And I'm like, "Well, who's your competition? And okay, how are you going to do it better?" My brother asked me when I told him I was going to start a website, he's like, "Well, how are you going to be better than Amazon?" I'm like, "Well, that's just a great question. I've got to figure that out." And so that's always what I thought about when I thought about starting a website. How are we going to be different than Amazon? And well, first of all, we're going to be there on the other end to talk to, and we're going to be able to curate gifts for you, and we're going to send it. And it's going to be beautifully wrapped, and there's going to be handwritten notes. And I just thought about ways to be different. So I feel like a website is no different than a brick and mortar in that way. Like, how are you going to be different? What's going to be your angle? And just be prepared to work. It's a lot of hard work.
It is a lot of hard work. That's great messaging, and that's a great way to wrap this up. Laura, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you want to promote? Sometimes we ask people to promote their business, but
Well, I'll promote you guys because I don't know. I just, again, my whole thing with Transworld was exploratory, and Mike took over, and next thing I know, we are just flying through the process. And I was like, so I don't have anything to promote anymore because I'm not working, but I'll promote you guys all day long.
And we'll promote Tugboat and the Bird for the new buyers as well. We want them to do well. And
absolutely.
And thank you so much for coming on today and telling us your story. It's really
You're
fascinating.
welcome. It was a
Really
pleasure.
great.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our deal of the week.
Deal of the week.
Sold.
Hi, it's Sherry Ferguson here with Transworld Business Advisors, and I get to talk with our owner and president, Tina Wright. Congratulations, you just closed a really big deal, and it had a lot of moving pieces. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so this business is a distributor of traffic equipment. And so it was started back in the 1950s, actually. So it's a multi-generational business. And they just got to a point in the life of the business that there was not a family member that wanted to take over the business. And so the seller contacted us about helping him possibly take it to market. And then he had actually a vendor reach out to him interested in possibly buying the business. And so he decided to work with him first. first and went and got a certified valuation done. And then when he realized how much was going to be involved, he ended up calling us back. It was about 2 years later. He ended up calling us back and asking for our assistance on the sales side. And so we were able to walk him through that process. And we see ourselves like a quarterback. And so there was a lot of moving pieces. And we worked with their third party, the buyer's third party due diligence teams. There was legal, financial, and other teams involved. Their HR department was involved, needing a lot of information. So I was able to help him walk through that process. And I think throughout the process, he said multiple times he was grateful he called back because he has a business to run and is very involved through this process. And so we were able to help him get through that.
I love that. And there's so much support that you give, the consulting that you give. I just remember conversations with you and back and forth and emails, and there's a lot of moving pieces while the business is up and running and lucrative and doing very well to get it to that closing time. So there's a lot of pieces. Yeah. Yep. And you've got a lot of hats on during that process.
That's right. It was. And we were able to get through. The buyer and seller worked great together, and the third party teams were great. They were just given a task to get done. And so we were able to provide what they needed. And obviously with it being a older business, some of the reports that they requested weren't available. And so we had to improvise and just help them get the information that they needed.
Absolutely. Well, we have a lot of owners of businesses that are looking at this. So Tina, some of them are thinking of selling. Tell us the best way to get in touch with you.
So the best way is probably by email. And my email address is twright@tworld.com. And that's twright@tworld.com. And my phone number is 919-605-2854.
Wonderful. All right. Well, congratulations. That was a great deal to get across the finish table, and you do that well.
Thank you.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for listing of the week.
Welcome back to the Deal Board, everybody. Again, we're live in our Dallas-Fort Worth Central office this week. I have Brian Martin with us from our team. Brian has an interesting new listing to share with us. So tell us a little bit about what you're selling.
Yeah, so it's a pizza shop in North Collin County, really great growing area. It's a licensed brand, so there's a little bit of brand support. There's brand network. They have over 50 stores in the area, so you get some good brand recognition. The owner is currently not profitable, but I think he would be the first to tell you he's made a lot of mistakes. So his labor rate is running about 40% right now. It should be, for an owner-operated pizza shop, maybe around 25%. If he was running 20%, like the brand usually is, so there's some other stores in the area that are running 20%, he'd be making about $100,000 a year.
Wow.
The actual brand license, just to buy the brand license, not the build out for the store or anything, is $150,000. Usually with the store build out, you're at somewhere around $450,000. Right now, he only wants $175,000 to get out of it. So expecting some good activity on that. A lot of good brand recognition in the area.
It's a great way to get into an established business for a lower cost. Usually we know like restaurants are very expensive to open. So if you can get into one like this. So Brian, if someone wants to learn more about this business, how can they contact you? How can they reach out?
Yeah. They can just, keep it informal. You can text me 214-695-1223, or my email is B as in for Brian and then Martin, BMARTIN @tworld.com.
Awesome. And we'll drop all that information into the show notes too. Brian, thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.